Tony?
I think so. There's a phone number. I think it might be his. I saw Dave. So we
See if we can get him on.
yeah. I think Dave and Commissioner O'Donnell are on here if we want to do a spell
okay.
check. I think.
Sure. You want to do that? I can't see. Do I need to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the
Dave, Commissioner O'Donnell.
This is Dave. I can hear you.
This is Tony. I can hear you.
Thanks, Commissioner. We got you.
Good morning. This is the Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for January 10th, 2024. Our first item is to approve the minutes from our meeting of December 20, 2023. Commissioner Schlesman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. Aye. Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Secretary.
Morning, Mr. Chair. There are 2 items on today's consent agenda, but we are deferring the first to January 31st, the administrative meeting on that date. Item number 2 is a request from Suburban Landfill Gas Recovery for certification as a renewable energy facility.
So, I move that we approve the application and issue a renewable energy facility ID certification number. We direct the applicant to establish a rec account with PJM GATS within 30 days of the certification and file an on-site and behind-the-meter generation report with the commission within 1 week of each recording of the generation date with GATS, and direct the applicant to notify the commission within 30 days if the information contained in the application has been changed. Commissioner Schlesman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Mr. Chair, item number 3 on the administrative meeting agenda is a request from Baltimore Gas and Electric Company for a mandatory waiver of a CPCN requirement.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Latangia Bunch on behalf of Commission staff. On November 21st, 2023, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company filed its request for mandatory waiver of CPCN requirement for a project to replace the conductors and insulation between the Chesapeake Park and Middle River substations. As part of its obligation to maintain a safe and reliable electric system, BGE has determined that 4.6 miles of conductors, insulators, and associated hardware on 82 structures of existing 115 kV overhead transmission line between Chesapeake Park and Middle River substations are obsolete and rusty and must be replaced. BGE intends to replace 3 phases of existing 0.731-inch diameter copper conductors with aluminum and carbon composite conductors of the same size, as well as replacing all porcelain insulator assemblies with toughened glass insulators and associated hardware. According to BGE's project construction schedule, the project is expected to be completed by May 2024, which includes engineering and permitting. Pursuant to Public Utilities Article Section 7207B4I, which states that for construction related to an existing overhead transmission line designed to carry a voltage in excess of 69,000 volts, the Commission shall waive the requirement to obtain a CPCN if the Commission finds that the construction does not, 1, require the electric company to obtain new real property or additional rights of way through eminent domain, or 2, require larger or higher structures to accommodate A, increased voltage, or B, larger conductors. Staff recommends that the Commission grant a mandatory waiver of the CPCN requirement pursuant to Public Utilities Article Section 7207B4I for the work described in the company's filing. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
So, any questions of staff? Oh, Commissioner
Maybe
Richard?
just one question. Thank you for that report. And this does seem to fall within the requirement of a mandatory waiver. But I did want to understand the project. Did you have a chance to review it? It's I guess 4.5 mile reconductoring at around $11 million. Does that seem to be a reasonable number from your investigation? Does it seem to comport with past projects, similar projects?
That I'm not sure about, but I can get back to you with an answer.
Okay,
on that.
and maybe that's a question I could also ask the company. Do you have, does the company come to you with any kind of regularity to talk about the upcoming projects, or do we have a sense of what the plan is, the capital management plan is for these types of transmission-related supplemental projects?
I do not know.
Do not? Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Michelle.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joel Michelle on behalf of BG. First of all, Happy New Year's. We do not have any formal presentation, but we are available for questions. I do have our project manager and one of our engineers who'd be available for questions.
So, any questions for the company? Commissioner Richard?
Yeah, if I could just continue. You heard the questions I had for staff. Do you, again, any information you can provide, is this, compared to past projects of this kind, does this comport with the amounts we should expect this
Sure,
cost?
I'll call our project manager, Stephen Ruger, who could answer those questions for you.
My name is Steve Ruger, project manager from BG&E. Yes, when we did the proposal for this and internal reviews, we based it on previous reconductoring projects. The particular model we used to calculate this one came in about 13.3 million from about 3 years ago. So for that one and this one, we brought it down a little bit, but we feel this is about comparable to other projects for replacing this size conductor for 115 kV lines.
Okay, well, good. That sounds like it's going in the right direction as far
Yeah,
as per mile cost.
Yep.
As far as going forward, again, this is becoming a big issue, obviously, transmission projects. And understand that this is something that needs to be done, the maintenance of our existing transmission. But do you have a plan, a 5-year plan, something that just kind of gives us a sense of where we're going, what the aggregate amounts are going to be in the future for these projects, so we have again a sense of what these costs, since they're supplemental projects, these are all going to be borne by just BGE customers. But do you have such a plan?
Yes, there is a 5-year plan that we update, and we're in the process of updating right now. So I don't have copies of it with me, so of course we can do follow-ups to show them and have them available. So the answer is yes, we do, and I'm part of those review processes, and I'm submitting other projects as we speak, for this 5-year plan.
Okay, good. And I know we have staff, particularly one of our advisors, Morris Schreim, who is very active in keeping us informed on this. So I would urge you to work with him, and it's something I'm interested in knowing where we're going, particularly since we have these other transmission projects coming from the Brandon Shore issue, deactivation from load growth. I think it's important for us as a commission to understand, even though transmission is not directly within our jurisdiction, just understand the costs of these projects and what we should expect going forward on transmission.
Yeah, there will be. I mean, this particular conductor was put up in, I think, 1942, so this is an 80-year-old conductor.
Absolutely. And I have no, this is exactly what you should be doing, on this particular project. So I have no, but I just, again, I think it's important since we have this opportunity to engage in this colloquy to really have a firm understanding of what's happening on the transmission side of these projects with your company. And the other question I had was just in notifications. I see in your submission that you're talking about about a quarter mile on either side.
Yes.
Do you expect that there will be any outages that will come out of this for any length of time?
None at all. The particular substation, circuit, was it 11580 is the circuit number. There's 2 circuits feeding that substation. It will be running off the second circuit for the course of this project. And we've already done that in December. There was a previous outage. They flipped running this circuit singly. So we've already run that substation off of one circuit for a week. So we've already done it that way. We'll be doing it again in April. So yes, the answer is no, there'll be no outage.
No outages. That's good to hear,
Yep.
especially in the wintertime.
Yep.
And then also, just as far as notifications, are you working with, I guess, authorities in the area? Because I did note that there'll be helicopters and all kinds of potentially dramatic things happening around this transmission line.
Yes.
Just to make sure that the public is aware of what's happening.
Yeah, the notice is going out, the letter we have the map, it's 1/4 mile either side of the line, and, and I think David Marks of council has already requested more information, we're supplying it to him as well for the city.
Okay,
council.
with the police departments, fire departments, and just local authorities, this is going to be taking place in that area.
MDOT, we have the clearance for 1-lane blockage.
Okay.
We checked with Department of Environment, there is no tide water available creeks underneath it, so that's clear there. And we're going with PGE and the regional So the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. We're getting all the clearances.
Great. Well, I appreciate your answers. Thank you. Thank you,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Chair.
So, any other questions? Commissioner Schlesman?
Okay, don't leave yet. Okay, so the 5-year plan, the supplemental plan. So this is the supplemental. This is transmission that is going to be paid for by BG ratepayers. Is that a plan that's filed just with PJM, or is it submitted to us? Or is it just internal?
Well, we obviously do internal project reviews for
Okay.
costs and that, and then the original 5-year plan. I believe we reviewed that. Commission. I'll have to defer.
Unfortunately, our transmission side of the house legal team is not here, obviously.
Okay.
So in terms of what the procedures are with FERC and PJM, Stephen wouldn't have any intel on that.
Okay, and Mr. Michelle, could you ask the process for submitting this 5-year plan? I'm assuming it goes to PJM, FERC, and then I guess.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Sussman, just so I'm clear on
Yeah.
your question, what is it that you would like,
Well,
like me to
so
clarify?
I actually wanted to know if this was just an internal plan or if this is a plan that's being submitted to some jurisdictional body, FERC
Understood.
or PJM. And then I guess this is more in the nature of a suggestion. Last week we had a technical conference for distribution system planning. We had PJM attend the technical conference, sort of recognizing that at this point in the planning process, you really can't separate out transmission and distribution. There are pieces of the planning process on the distribution side that will affect transmission and vice versa. And so I would recommend, and I'm sure that you have folks that are going to be involved in the distribution planning working group, but I would just recommend that transmission and transmission planning be included in that process, and since it really sort of plays into both wheelhouses. And I know that transmission is not directly jurisdictional to us, but certainly a lot of the things that we do impact transmission build out and vice versa. So that's really just a sort of a suggestion.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay, no other questions? With that, I move that we grant the company a mandatory waiver of the CPCN requirement for the work described in the company's filing pursuant to Public Utilities Article 7-207B4I. Commissioner Schlesman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. Aye. Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Mr. Chair, item number 4 is an annual true-up from Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative to its SOS Rider G service rate.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Eric Delgado on behalf of staff. On November 21st, 2023, the Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, SMECO, filed tariff revisions to reflect the annual true-up of its Rider G rate. Rider G provides SMECO customers the opportunity to source their load from 100% renewable energy. SMECO achieves this by purchasing renewable energy credits, RECs, above the number of RECs required to meet Maryland's renewable energy portfolio standard. For 2024, the Rider G rate will decrease from $0.022 per kilowatt hour to $0.02101 per kilowatt hour. The main driver for the decrease is the lower amount of cost recovery needed in 2024. With this change, SMECO customers served under Rider G can expect an average reduction of $1.01 in their monthly bills for 2024. Additionally, SMECO has updated tariff language to include time-of-use rate schedules, which were not in effect when Rider G was approved. Staff recommends that the Commission accepts for filing the proposed Rider G rate with an effective date of January 10th, 2024. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions of staff? Seeing none.
Good morning, Chair Hoover, members of the commission. Damon Krieger on behalf of Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. Thanks to staff for its thoughtful comments and support, and I'm happy to take any questions that any of the commissioners may have.
So, any questions for Smecco? Alrighty. With that, I move we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of January 10, 2024. Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Mr. Chair, item number 5 consists of tariff revisions from Columbia Gas of Maryland, Inc.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Pam Coates on behalf of staff. At the Commission's administrative meeting on December 20, 2023, the Commission rejected Columbia Gas of Maryland's proposed 2024 Infrastructure Replacement and Improvement Surcharge, IRIS, sometimes referred to as the STRIDE surcharge. On that same day, Columbia communicated to staff that, in compliance with the Commission's order, they would discontinue the IRIS surcharge on January 1, 2024. The current filing, filed December 21, 2023, brings Columbia's tariff into compliance with the Commission's order by setting the IRIS rates to 0 for all customer classes. Staff recommends the Commission accept the proposed tariff pages for filing effective January 1, 2024. I'm available for questions.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Rebecca Dan Hires on behalf of Columbia Gas, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Columbia? All right. So I move we accept the tariff provisions for filing with an effective date of January 1, 2024. Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barve.
Aye.
Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Mr. Chair, item number 6 is a community solar co-location request from TPE MD PR 53 LLC.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and members of the Commission. Annette Garofalo on behalf of Commission staff. This is an appeal of TPE's partial grant of an application to build 4 co-located community solar generating facilities on a brownfield location. On September 13th, 2023, TPE's application was granted as it applied to 2 projects at 4401 Steed Road, consistent with COMAR 2062-0308B3, and it was denied as to 2 additional projects on the same or an adjacent location. The total size of the 4 projects would be 15 megawatts. By the instant request, TPE asked the Commission to find that COMAR 2062, as it applies to co-location, has been superseded by the terms of HB 908. According to applicant, COMAR 2062 currently lacks validity to the extent that the regulations are inconsistent with the newly adopted statute. HB 908 was signed into law on May 16, 2023, and became Chapter 652, Section 3 of Acts 203, and was subsequently codified at PUA 7306. The bill makes permanent the Community Solar Energy Generating System Pilot Program with many changes. One change that is relevant to TPE's request is an exemption for community solar energy generating stations located on brownfield locations and clean fill sites. It exempts them from the general prohibition against co-location on the same or an adjacent parcel of land if the total installed capacity of all community solar energy generating systems on the same or an adjacent parcel were to exceed 6 megawatts. It's staff's position, however, that HB 908 is not yet in full effect. To be clear on this point, Acts 2023, Chapter 652, Section 3 provides that notwithstanding any other law, all regulations adopted under 7306.2E of the Public Utilities Article for the operation of the Community Solar Energy Generating Systems Pilot Program before the effective date of this Act shall continue in effect until amended or repealed. Among other things, the new legislation envisions that revisions to the regulations currently extant for the pilot program will be adopted for the permanent program no later than January 1, 2025. In granting TPE's application as allowed under the current regulations, staff acted properly under currently effective law. The net metering working group is drafting new regulations appropriate to the community solar law as amended, and until new regulations are adopted as final, COMAR 20620308B3 should and does remain in effect, with the result that only co-located community solar projects with a combined capacity not exceeding 6 megawatts may be allowed on brownfield locations. Staff recommends the Commission determine that, 1, consistent with Section 3 of Chapter 652 of the 2023 Laws of Maryland, all regulations adopted under Public Utilities, Section 7, 306.2E, for the operation of the Community Solar Energy Generating Systems Pilot Program currently in effect remain so until new regulations are adopted. And TPE's application was, and we also asked the Commission to find that TPE's application was properly decided on September 13th, 2023.
So, any questions for staff? Commissioner Richard?
I guess the first question, when will we see the, the draft regulations? Are those going to be here anytime soon?
I can't give you a specific date, but they'll be here soon. We have been working on them.
Soon, this is kind of important because obviously there's some important provisions in this new law that I think would be very applicable to try to get some of these projects moving. So, are there issues that are holding it up? Are they partially ready, or where are we?
Our work group leader, I think,
Okay,
can perhaps
thanks.
answer that.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Phil Vanderheyden from technical staff. Your Honor, we have a copy that is in, I would say, final stages. There are some disputes, and we need to sort of prepare the document that will sort of put side-by-side language so you can compare the two. But we are planning to have those done at least by the early February, but I think we're trying to shoot for this month. So the expectation is that we will try to have these regulations filed. Staff will file these on behalf of the working group so that we can hopefully schedule that rulemaking in the first quarter of this year.
Okay, that's encouraging. And am I correct? It's 120 days, the process. If everything just goes perfectly, is that what it takes to get to final publication of a regulation?
So there's a couple of factors, but that's a fair estimate. There are a number of things that we're going to try to do to get these to you quickly, make it easy to resolve the policy issues, get all of the cost estimates for these things squared away and sent down to Annapolis. Because we have not only this rulemaking, but then there's a second rulemaking that will be needed for community solar to handle the consolidated billing issue and the one or two other minor items that we tweaked relative to some other legislation. So we are working hard on schedule, and we're going to be keeping the hearing room busy.
Okay. Could I just one other question about the subscriber organization requirement? Essentially, that's the issue today. Is that correct? You're not able to process the subscriber organization application, which is preventing the project to go to the utility. Is that where we have an issue today, according to the staff concern?
So the applicant, TPE, filed an application requesting that 4 projects be certified in the...
As an SO, right?
It has an SO, TPE has an SO number, yes.
Okay.
And the size of those 4 projects together is 15 megawatts. Then the regulations currently limit brownfield construction to 6 megawatts.
Okay. Is there any provision or anything to potentially like waive the requirement that the applicant have, or the project developer have that be a an SO, a subscriber organization?
Yeah, I'm not certain, but to the extent that that does exist in the regulations, I would have to check. But the real problem here is it's not only this one particular regulations, there are multiple regulations that will be changed, and we'll have things coming in. It will be very hard to treat everybody fairly if we have to try and as we are just processing things, change what we're doing without final regulations.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I'll be interested to hear more of the presentation this morning here. But yeah, this is one of those times when we have a really great project before us in a perfect location, in central Maryland, and it would be really a shame to delay this unduly if we can somehow figure out how to move things forward here. I think we also have a clear direction from the legislature. They'd like us to move forward with these projects by policy and also on these brownfields and these types of locations. So again, I thank you for your answers and look forward to hear more from the participants this morning.
So, any
Your
other
Honor,
questions
just
for
if I
staff?
can, respond just very briefly. The General Assembly did put a date of January 1, 2025 in its order.
Sure.
In its
Right.
not in the uncodified language, which was part of the acts.
Okay.
So I think they weren't expecting it to be done quite
Okay,
so
well.
quickly.
Okay, so noted. Office of People's Counsel.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commission. Brock Miller on the behalf of OPC. So we reviewed the filing and staff's analysis. We understand staff's analysis that the community solar regulations don't permit this type of co-location currently. However, the Commission has broad discretion to waive a regulation for good cause, specifically here in this subtitle 2062-0104 of COMAR. These facilities that we're dealing with will not be built and certainly won't be operational until after January 1st, 2025, when the new permanent program is in effect. So therefore, in the interest of moving community solar forward and solar generation forward, we suggest that they could restyle this maybe as a waiver request and refile, if that's necessary, but we don't otherwise take a position on the request.
I see. So just so I'm straight on this, should they take up your suggestion, OPC would be in support of that effort?
Correct.
Okay, good enough.
Mr. Chair? So OPC would be supportive of the waiver. Does staff believe that we have the authority to waive this?
If the regulations provide that, you would have that authority, and that's something I don't have the regulations with me. I would have to check that. I can
Okay,
do that.
I wonder if staff could get back to us on
Sure, of
whether,
course.
you believe we have that waiver authority. Thank you.
Of course. I do want to emphasize, though, that this is only one small piece of the puzzle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hoover, Commissioners. David, are you still?
No, I think. Anything else? Or?
So just to be clear, if they did restyle it and filed as a waiver request, we would still want to review that application whenever it
Okay,
was.
I understand. So, no, I'm not trying to box you in. So,
Thank you, Chair Hoover, Commissioners. David Bugelmans on behalf of TPE MD 53 LLC. I'm joined this morning by Ms. Franny Uhas from Turning Point Energy, the developer of these projects. Commissioner Richard alluded to this site, but just a quick summary of what this project is. These are 4 proposed projects on a brownfield previously known as Hyde Field in Prince George's County. The site has a rich history, initially opened in 1934 to support United States Army air operations, Over the years, it's been repurposed for various industrial uses, including as a sand and gravel mine. Recently, the airport was shut down and the site lay dormant until it was acquired by a real estate developer. The current planned development is a mixed-use development. It features 750 single-family townhouses, 240 two-family dwellings, 350 multifamily dwelling units, walking trails, 60,000 square feet of commercial space. Will also feature major road improvements, 4 miles of public trails, bike lanes, sidewalks, 90 acres of woodland conservation, preserving stream tributaries, and 140 acres of combined parks and open green spaces. And as part of this development, Turning Point's been selected to develop 4 community solar projects that will be co-located with this broader development. What strikes me as somebody who sees many of these projects all over the state is that it checks several policy boxes. Because what we have before us is a brownfield project. It's a project that is proposed for, I think, what's recognized as a favored site in Maryland for these projects. And it's also being planned as co-located with this community from the start. So this truly is a community solar project. It's part of this comprehensive development. Going to the legal issue here, as staff summarized, the community solar pilot program regulations allowed for a total of 6 megawatts to be co-located on brownfield locations. Originally, community solar projects were capped at 2 megawatts, so that basically meant you could do 3 2-megawatt projects on brownfields. However, this was amended by House Bill 908 during the 2023 legislative session, was transitioned from a pilot program to a permanent program, and as part of that legislation, the General Assembly removed the 6 megawatt limit on brownfields, allowing for an unrestricted number and capacity of projects on those locations. And that's reflected in Public Utilities Article 7-306.2 D13, where subparagraph I of that section specifies there's a maximum of 5 megawatts of co-located projects. And subparagraph 2 then creates a series of exemptions, one of which are for projects on, quote, brownfield locations. Notably, will other exemptions under the statute have like a capacity limit, for instance, 10 megawatts maximum for agrivoltaic projects on any type of greenfield site. Brownfields don't have such a limit. So the intent is clear that this was trying to open up these sites to more projects under the permanent program. HB 908 became effective on July 1st, 2023, and the new co-location requirements in the statute became effective on that date. With respect to the uncodified language cited by staff, if you read what the uncodified language says, it says that all regulations adopted under Section 7-306.2E, the Public Utilities Article for the operation of the Community Solar Energy Generating Systems Pilot Program before the date of this act shall continue in effect until amended or repealed. So it's our position that uncodified language, it refers specifically to the pilot program. So the idea is that pilot program projects shouldn't be subject to all of a sudden these change requirements for the permanent program. So it's creating a distinction between the two. Now, how does that interface with the request before you? The key thing to keep in mind is these are not pilot program projects. Based off of current permitting timeframes, Turning Point anticipates to achieve commercial operations at the earliest in April 2027, which is well after the 2024 start of the permanent program. Really, the latest the permanent program can start is around January 1st, 2025, but we expect, potentially it would start maybe sometime in the middle of this year. So again, these are permanent program projects. They're not pilot program projects. Staff in its comments points to the fact that we're still doing this rulemaking, which is true. And I can say as a participant, there's been some policy disputes, but staff's done an excellent job, running that process, and I think we're frankly ahead of schedule with that. But the fact is, on the co-location issue, we know what the co-location requirements are, because the permanent program statute says these are the new co-location requirements. It's just spelled out directly in the statute. And then it includes language that says, as part of the first rulemaking, the commission shall update its regulations to comply with the new co-location requirements. So this is a situation where we know what the requirements are going to be. It's laid out in statute. These projects will be built when the permanent program is effective, so there's not an opportunity for being out of compliance with those requirements. I know I've gone on for a long time, but two additional points. This is important. First off, if you read the permanent program legislation, I think it does contemplate that projects will be applying now for SO approval and eventually interconnection to keep the development, the development moving forward for these projects. Even though we're still on the pilot, these projects should be allowed to apply for SO approval and then apply to the utility for interconnection, so that once the permanent program is effective, there isn't a gap. So there's not a gap where projects just can't do anything. That's contemplated within the statute. It says that projects that have a queue position or the pilot will effectively have a permanent program queue position. So that's one important thing. I think Commissioner Richard alluded to this. This is my final point, just the order of operations and why this is important. The way the community solar program's been implemented to date is the SO approval process has really become the first required permitting step for any project. Because what happens is that once a project is approved by staff, it is put onto a master list of projects that includes the associated SO entity, along with the address of the project, the size of the project. And my understanding is on a weekly basis, that list is given to the utilities. And then when a project applies to interconnect with the utility, they then cross-reference the interconnection application with that list. And if the project is not on there, it can't proceed with the interconnection request. Interconnection, generally speaking, is one of the initial first sort of due diligence type permitting steps a developer needs to undertake, because without getting the results of that study, you don't know if you can, from an engineering perspective, actually interconnect. You don't know what the costs are. You don't know what the interconnection for the project's going to look like. So this SO approval is really for this project and potentially for other projects in similar situations, is basically holding this up from being able to advance project development in any meaningful way. So I just wanted to make clear, that's why we're before you on this, because without resolving this project's going to be held up until the permanent program becomes effective at some point, potentially a year from now. So I covered a lot of ground there. This is an important request for these projects. This, I think, is a win-win for the state. It's a really great, interesting project, and we're simply trying to move this forward so it's ready once the permanent program takes effect. So I know there was a lot there, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Sussman.
So I agree with Commissioner Richard. I think this is a great project. I would like to find a way to approve the project. I'm a little concerned about the legislative language. So I'm finding the idea of perhaps a waiver appealing. Would you like to amend your application to include a waiver as sort of an alternative request of the commission, so that we could take it under advisement with the additional arguments, and staff can let us know what their position is on our authority to waive certain provisions?
Well, sure.
I'd like to find a solution.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
The regulations are clear. There is like a blanket waiver provision that I think applies to all the commission's regulations. So we could certainly do that and come back before you. I do think there is potentially an argument, again, because what we're saying is that these projects will be built when the permanent program is effective, and we know what the co-location requirements are. So, hopefully I'm not shooting myself in the foot here, but a waiver would be needed if there is potentially a violation of COMAR if there wasn't a waiver. And part of what we're saying is that these projects will be in compliance with
Yeah,
the
no, I
requirements.
understand.
So,
It's that language that says, on or before
Yeah.
January 1st, 2025.
Yep.
And that's, I'm sort of struggling a little
Yep.
bit with that language.
Yep.
So to the extent
Okay.
that we can find another way in which we can solve this issue and not upend the legislative language, so that's, I'm sort of asking if you can sort of perhaps go back and and resubmit with a waiver request. I don't know if that makes sense to you. I'm just trying to find a way in which we can say yes.
Yeah,
Or at least I can say
we
yes.
appreciate that. I think that's the potential way forward. If that's if that's what the commission's decision is, we'd obviously be happy to do that. So.
Well, actually, the point is to not have us make a decision.
Okay. If it's deferred,
I
we're happy
think.
to do it. Okay.
So, just to be clear, I want you to know that today you have one waiver, and if once you do this, you'll have dozens of waivers every week.
Well, presumably the regulations will be in effect, hopefully soon.
Well, every week until their regulations are in effect.
Right.
Okay, Commissioner Barve.
Yeah, I also would like to help this project move along as quickly as possible. And since regulations are imminent, I don't think that a waiver in this instance would be so damaging to our process. But I don't know who to ask this question of, maybe perhaps staff. I mean, we as a commission have the ability to move this forward without requiring the company to file another request, do we not?
Certainly, if the regulations specifically allow for a waiver, I guess the applicant could ask for a waiver now, and you could go ahead. But I just don't know if they do allow that.
Well, all I'll say, Mr. Chairman, to conclude, is I don't see how, if we were to make an exception and allow this project to move forward, I personally don't see how that would conflict with the legislative intent. Thank you.
Any other questions for Commissioner O'Donnell? Go ahead. So,
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask somebody, when did we adopt a permanent program? Because I was under the mind, and I probably have a gross conceptual error here. I was under the mind that all of our PSEGs was being done under pilot for now, but I hear allusions to the permanent program. And could someone tell me when that occurs so I can go back and take a look at that?
To the extent that's addressed to staff, staff is dealing with everything under the old legislation, which is not a permanent program, but a pilot program. And so, and the utilities, I should say, are also dealing with that. So there are a number of things we'll have to do. Redo the queue. There are just a lot of details. I don't want to bore you with them, but to the extent that you try and grant this, you may be creating for yourself, and you'll definitely be creating for staff a number of issues.
So, Mr. Chairman, I take it that we were operating under a pilot only until this pending law passed, till this law passed. Is that right?
So that's correct. That's certainly staff's position, and the staff's position is further that the law is not effective yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So, a couple questions for the applicant. One, so this is a brownfield site. Why is it a brownfield site, if you know?
It was used as a sand and gravel mine, so it was fully mined.
So, but I mean, there's no like environmental remediation activities that have happened at this site, or?
Yeah. So there is involvement with MDE. So brownfields need to go through something called the voluntary cleanup program at MDE. So there is that level of involvement. I will say, brownfields are defined to include sites that have been mined and have, were mined under a permit, right? So there's also that piece that grants it brownfield status for purposes of the program.
And is this area subject to input from the National Capital Parks and Planning Commission?
It is. These projects are, would go through the mandatory referral process, which is unique to Prince George's County, and that is part of the Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission.
So, I mean, not to complicate things, but it seems to me I've seen in the past where there's been delays in these projects for both, the remediation efforts related to brownfields and then other times trying to get through the Park and Planning Commission process. Do you anticipate that happening here?
No. So, Prince George's County is projects, in my experience, are able to advance there. It's just they have kind of a time-consuming review that takes more time than other jurisdictions. But the anticipation is there aren't going to be holdups for permitting of these projects. I will say, kind of going back to this request, the project wants to begin that permitting in earnest. And another thing these will need are a CPCN from the commission, right? And again, just like in the order of operations, without being able to interconnect to understand what does this look like, they can't make the investment to move forward with the meat of permitting. So the plan is to do all of this. We're kind of we've been held up effectively by this.
All right, so for staff, given the fact that, we have an existing program, it's a pilot program, but we have an existing program to approve projects like this, how difficult would it be, apart from the situation with the regulations, but just sort of factoring this into the current system, how much of a stretch is this project compared to what we're doing for projects right now?
So, this is a bigger project. I don't think we're doing any that are 15 megawatts, but to the extent that we are, they have a different situation. I would have to look at the list. I don't think we're doing any that are 15 megawatts. But there are some that are in the queue for CPCN, and they certainly can apply for a CPCN. I don't think there's anything that would stop them from applying from a CPCN, but I don't think there's anything for the to be examined by the environmentally by the people that usually examine that.
Sure.
I think, Your Honor, the concern here is there's several hundred projects that are currently in the various project queues with the utilities. We have sort of some limitations on how fast interconnection studies can be done, and to the extent those studies are larger, they may be more complex. Under the current rules, only projects that have been allowed into the pilot have gone through that interconnection process to this point, because we have not accepted projects that went outside that scope. This may be one of several or many perhaps projects that you might see, and part of the concern we might have is is this fair to all the other applicants who have chosen to follow these rules and not attempted to expand beyond what the pilot rules would allow. So before, if a waiver application was made, I think we would probably try to analyze that and make sure that by granting this particular project's waiver, we didn't disadvantage anyone else. And then I probably would want to make sure the utility folks are able to process the interconnections that may be waiting until the new permanent program regulations have been adopted. So there's probably some technical things we'd want to sort through here. From a standpoint on our end, if a project comes in and it's asking for 6 megawatts on a brownfield, we have, looked at that, done an evaluation. The utility also, presumably is when they are accepting projects, they are also reviewing that. We sort of try to catch anything that's obviously going to be an issue before it gets over to the utility. But, it's not significantly different to say, all right, should we allow this project to go to the utility? Does it fit the regulations? Saying that it's 15, 14 megawatts, there's some new rules that we have to take a look at. There's some things that allowed certain projects to not have to go through the CPCN process. Some of those things are not addressed in the rules. So it's slightly more complicated to look at a project that's a little bit out of scope on our end, but there are some follow-on effects that before you would allow projects that would otherwise not have been accepted into the pilot to go in. I think what we want to do is make sure that we have a process to deal with all of them so that they don't all show up at one time. There is still, some value in getting a queue position because ultimately there's only 3,000 megawatts that can be allowed in net metering under this cap. All of these projects compete for that space. We are not yet, I believe, above, say, 1,500 megawatts in the state, but it may, with the amount of projects that are in your queue, that'll probably, jump beyond 2,000 without a lot of time. At least, that'll be what's in the queue. And we still have to resolve a lot of issues that will not necessarily be in front of you in this next rulemaking as to what we do once we get close to that 3,000 megawatt limit, how we're going to deal with that. So there's some volume concerns here that I think have a practical implication. If you would like to allow, a desire to waive this, I think we'd want to take a close look to make sure that there are no technical problems with adopting or making a change here that would allow this project and perhaps, several or many others to do the same. I think all the developers would want to be treated equally and fairly, and there may be others that, are saying, hey, if I knew I could apply for a waiver, I certainly would have done that. So we have a working group that has, most of the main developers in there. So one of the things I would perhaps want to do before we consider making a waiver to the pilot regs to allow something into an interconnection queue at any of the utilities sort of before the end of the pilot program is we want to make sure that everyone that is in the industry is going to be agreeable to that. And I think that would just be fair and maybe even make it easier for that process to happen.
And so back to the draft regulations, I mean, not to hold you to this, but your anticipation is end of this month, beginning of February, when you're going to submit something for us to consider.
Yes, Your Honor. We have so actually, Mr. Bugelmans and the folks at CCSA did a great job of sort of volunteering to set us up with a draft set of regulations that essentially duplicate what the new legislative changes are. In the process of reviewing that, there have been a couple of folks who have asked, some parties have said, hey, we'd like to change a couple of other things. Although I sort of was hoping we could just get you like a clean set of regs that, hey, these just follow, these implement the law as cleanly as possible. We've identified one or two little items we need to clean up. We have them. I mean, they could be submitted, as is tomorrow, and I think we'd have a fairly, decent rulemaking, but there have been a number of parties that have been working pretty hard to say, hey, these are a couple things I'd like to change. We have identified a couple of problems that the law does not anticipate that we really should get straightened out. So there's still some tweaks to do, but they're near term. I don't know if it's appropriate for you to look at a draft so you can kind of see what I'm talking about early, but given that, we'll file that at some point. But, we've had a lot of cooperation from the industry. It's sort of unprecedented in the level of assistance we've gotten drafting these regs. So yes, very, very near term. But still, that process takes a certain amount of time, and it's not an instantaneous approval and go into effect, correct? I think if we went fast, and it'd be June or July, probably one as early as you would have published regs if we were highly optimistic and everything went perfectly. Probably where that is. Okay. And back to the applicant, if the path forward prior to the approval of proposed regulations in June or July is treating this as a waiver request, I think you'll be fine with that.
Yes, the applicant would be fine with that.
All right, so we're going to take this under advisement and sort of weigh all these various issues that we've heard today and get something out relatively soon.
Okay.
So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And with that, I think we are adjourned. For those people that are